Let me just get 1905. Last call for check-ins. ZS6IP is standing by. Okay, there we go. Nothing else is heard. Therefore, I'm going to start this week's net, even though we've had no check-ins, being Christmas Eve, and nobody has come up on Zoom either, which isn't a problem, because we will still say greetings to one and all and welcome to this week's net. Those wishing to join this net using Zoom may do so now, as it is open. And if you do not have the Zoom link, please contact me on WhatsApp 082-859-2684, and I'll send you the link with the greatest of pleasure. And of course, today is Sunday, 24 December 2023. And the time is 19:06 at the moment. I'm running a minute behind. We begin the weekly net with the radio amateur check-ins on the Roodepoort repeater for 5 minutes before proceeding. This net is broadcast every Sunday evening starting at 1900 and is broadcast for the benefit of radio amateurs, disaster relief CERT volunteers, as well as members of the general public. The net is therefore open to all interested parties. Everyone is welcome to participate using either amateur radio, Zoom, or both. And I would like to remind all the radio amateurs who have not checked in that you do not need to be a member of any group or club to check in or to use the repeater or any of the amateur bands. All that is required of you is that you have a valid amateur radio license issued by ICASA, which automatically grants you the right to use any of the amateur radio bands at any time. There is no need to ask for or be granted permission from anyone to use the repeaters or amateur radio bands. I'd also like to encourage all listeners and participants to share the weekly net Zoom link with everyone they know throughout South Africa. Doing so will help us grow the weekly net and will contribute to disseminating information as far and wide as possible. Right, so therefore, having concluded the opening statements, let's begin to unpack the COVID-19 figures. Just to remind you that the only figures available are now being published by the World Health Organization. So locally, there's no figures that are actually ready available. And of course, globally, we're sitting at 772,838,745 cases being reported by the World Health Organization as at 19 December 2023. And of course, this is compared to the 772,386,000 cases. However, it must be noted that in this last week, this is an increase of 452,676 new cases compared to last week's numbers of 247,251. I would like to add that there is a new variant out, J something, or yeah, it's a J2.76.B or something, some ridiculous number. I don't think they've given it a name yet. So there is a new variant out, which the World Health Organization is concerned could in actual fact become even more contagious than previous variants. And this might see a increase globally. That being said, the global death toll now stands at 6,988,679, compared to the previous week's total of 6,987,000, which is an increase of 1,457, only 200 up on the 1,200 of the previous week. Now, fortunately, this week, MPOX has finally published some figures. And globally, as at the 13th of December, 92,976 cases have been reported. compared to the previous, I think it was 2 weeks ago, of 92,182. This is an increase of 794 new cases this week, whereas the previous week only saw an increase of 209. So a bit strange that even MPOX seems to be a lot higher. South Africa is still at 5 since August of 2022. No figures to report there. However, following the current outbreak of measles, I'm now including, and they have been for several weeks, including the measles and figures in the interest of public health. So as at the 12th of December 2023, South Africa has 1,338 cases compared to 1,317. We saw an increase of 21 this week. Now, Limpopo is still reporting the highest number of cases at 533, last reported 524, followed by Gauteng at 265, last reported at 224, and the Northwest at 226, last reported at 222. So we see an increase of 41 cases in the past 2 weeks. Rubella, otherwise known as German measles, are now being reported along with the measles figures. And rubella is a contagious disease caused by a virus. Most people who get rubella usually have a mild illness with symptoms that include a low-grade fever, sore throat, and a rash that starts on the face and spreads to the rest of the body. So for simplicity's sake, I'll only include the totals. Eastern Cape, 36, no change. Free State, 1, no change. Gauteng Province, 16, an increase of 2. KZN, 2, no change. Limpopo, 4, no change. Mpumalanga, 2, no change. Northwest, 8, no change. Northern Cape, 166, an increase of 46 cases. The Western Cape, 658. That is up by quite a substantial amount. The previous figure was 466. So that's up by almost 200 odd new cases. This week, we see a total of 893. Okay, that being said, this week I want to continue with a quote from the ICRC blog located at https://blogs.icrc.org/law-and-policy, which is the humanitarian law and policy website of the International Committee of the Red Cross. This week, I'm moving on with part 4 of the document dated the 2nd of November 2023. And just to give you a brief reminder, I last quoted from the document, which states states and militaries need to be very cautious of that, as it raises the question of whether and which responsibilities to protect states might have towards those operators, in particular in light of the obligations of constant care in the conduct of military operations. And this is as per Article 57, subparagraph 1, from the first additional protocol, as well as from customary international humanitarian rule 15, and of passive precautions as further discussed below. Okay, so this week we're going to continue with the principle of proportionality. The principle of proportionality prohibits parties to the conflict from launching an attack which may be expected to cause incidental loss of civilian life, injury to civilians, damage to civilian objects, or a combination thereof, which would be excessive in relation to the concrete and direct military advantage anticipated. This is now Article 51, subparagraph 5b from the first additional protocol. The principle of proportionality is a corollary of the principle of distinction. acknowledging that in the conduct of hostilities causing incidental harm to civilians and civilian objects is often unavoidable. This principle places a limit on the extent of incidental civilian harm permissible. All foreseeable direct and indirect harm on civilians and civilian objects against the direct military advantage anticipated have to be carefully balanced when planning, deciding upon, and launching an attack. So, for example, the destruction of a space system that provides positioning, navigation, and timing to civilians and the military alike could lead to plane crashes, traffic accidents, and disturbances in the global financial market, all devastating effects on the civilian population, while the military advantage due to a redundancy plan might be only marginal. Going back to our question as to which part of such a dual-use space system can be attacked, the proportionality assessment is relevant not only to foreseeable incidental civilian harm to other civilian objects and persons in space, but also in terms of the foreseeable consequences for civilians in space and on Earth of impairing the civilian use of this dual-use space system. The principle of proportionality is also pertinent to the issue of space debris. In particular, destructive attacks on space objects risk causing a large amount of space debris. Depending on the orbit and how congested the orbit is, debris can be expected to have a detrimental effect on the space environment and may cause a collision with other, sorry, let me rephrase that or say that again, may cause a collision with and damage to civilian and neutral state objects traveling in the affected orbit, also leading to severe consequences on Earth for the civilian population and neutral states. Keeping in mind how dependent on space support we as an international community are, this must be considered when assessing proportionality. For an example, an anti-satellite weapon that intercepts and destroys a target in space may generate a massive cloud of debris that presents a persistent hazard to the space activities of astronauts, other space objects in orbit servicing civilians on Earth, and the current and future space activities of all spacefaring states and other entities. Even small pieces traveling at an extremely high speed can destroy or damage any space object that it encounters in space. Depending on its altitude, the unpredictable threat posed by debris may spread and endure for decades or even centuries. With regard to an attack that is expected to cause debris, the proportionality assessment merits a thorough case-by-case analysis, and a wide variety of factors should be considered, such as number, orbit, and duration of travel of the debris expected to be created. The creation of space debris does not only concern the principle of proportionality, the prohibition on indiscriminate attacks, and the principle of precautions as subsequently discussed, but also other rules of international humanitarian law, notably the rules protecting the neutral environment, such as Articles 35.3 and 55.1 of the first additional protocol. Customary international humanitarian law rules 43, 44, and 45, and Articles 1 and 2 of the Convention on the Prohibition of Military or any hostile use of any of environmental modification techniques. We will continue next week in part 5, where I continue the discussion on the principle of precaution. So that being said, let me just find out, are there any other stations out there that would like to be added to this week's weekly check-in. I'll add you to the list. Please go ahead now. ZS6OP is standing by. Okay, nothing heard. So finally, in closing, I'd like to encourage everyone to register as a disaster relief cert volunteer and to prepare and train to assist local communities for when disaster strikes. And of course, being Christmas Eve, I'd like to wish all the listeners and, of course, any viewers of the Zoom meeting when it's published, a Merry Christmas for tomorrow, the 25th of December. Hope you have a good day on the 26th. And of course, I'd like to thank all those who have checked in, which is none this week, and none on Zoom, but also all those that have actually been listening. Now, as the COVID-19 pandemic is still ongoing and is still infecting thousands weekly, please remember to physically distance yourself and to wear a mask to protect others, especially the elderly, who could lose their lives if infected with COVID-19. Remember that it is always best to sanitize or wash your hands on a regular basis in any event. Doing so will assist in stopping the spread of other respiratory diseases as well. So for the week moving forward, be safe, be prepared, and of course, be happy. This is ZS6OPS now releasing the Rudapert repeater for general use. Cheers all.